Today's talk is on cultivating mindfulness-based emotional composure by Brother Billy Tan. Brother Billy did a talk. This is part 2 of his talk. The part 1 was done in May this year, and basically this talk is to explore self-help methodology that applies the combined principles of mindfulness and cognitive psychology to tame the emotional excitement and cultivate mindfulness-based emotional composure. Brother Billy Tan is a business development consultant and professional trainer who has trained countless business professionals in more than 20 countries. And currently, Brother Billy is also doing a lot of Dhamma speaking abroad as well. I think he just finished a Dhamma tour in the Philippines, right? Okay. And Brother Billy is a certified master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, a certified Six Sigma black belt practitioner. It's not a Taekwondo black belt. This one is a quality black belt, Six Sigma program, okay? And a certified clinical hypnotherapist. In sharing the Dhamma, Brother Billy enjoys connecting findings from neuroscience and psychology to present the teachings of the Buddha from a scientific and modern perspective. Let's give a big hand to Brother Billy Tan.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Very happy to be back. This is the second part of a 2-part series. The first part done in May was basically the basic principle of Satipatthana. And Satipaṭṭhāna has been commonly translated as mindfulness. Now, the real meaning of Satipatthana is a lot deeper than that. I will explain later on today so that you can understand the deeper meaning of Satipatthana. So this morning's topic is cultivating mindfulness-based emotional composure. One of the problems we face today is that anything we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch arouses our emotions. And when these emotions are aroused, they make us emotionally excited. And in that moment of emotional excitement, if we are not careful with the way we are thinking, then we could go into some kind of mental proliferation. That means the mind begins to think of thoughts which may not be helpful, may not be wholesome, or may not be productive for the moment. And it takes us to the past with our memory, takes us to the future with our imagination, and we're trying to change the present with our expectations. All these three are not helpful to us. You know, memory takes us to the past. Imagination takes us to the future. Expectation tries to change the present. And these three can actually bring us more suffering. So today's sharing is really to share about how we can use some of these techniques that is taught by the Buddha, and also some of the techniques that we learn from cognitive psychology, how we can combine them and actually understand how to apply the teachings of the Buddha in Satipatthana to help us become more composed, and so that we can actually live a more peaceful, harmonious, and happier life. Right? So the ultimate purpose is really to be happy. I mean, we all want to be happy. That's it. Whatever it is we're doing, and of course, the ultimate happiness, the greatest bliss, is the bliss of Nibbana. So this is really what all Buddhists are pursuing. In essence, happiness. So today we will explore the teachings of the Buddha from a scientific perspective. First, to understand how emotions are aroused. Emotions can be aroused very easily and you don't even realize it. And realize how emotional excitement, when emotions are aroused, we get excited. This emotional excitement leads to dissatisfactoriness. And this dissatisfactoriness is what the Buddha calls dukkha. Of course, dukkha is often translated as suffering, and suffering is a very serious word. I try not to use that word because sometimes it makes it sound so negative and so serious. I just like to use the word dissatisfactoriness, stress, and distress. I'll explain a bit more about stress and distress later on. So that's basically leading us to dukkha. And we have to recognize how we easily fall into these thinking traps, because once we get emotionally excited, the mind begins to wander off, and that takes us into various kinds of thinking which is not helpful, and we call these thinking traps. Psychologists call this cognitive distortion. Cognitive refers to the way we think, right? The process of thinking, and distortion means it gets distorted. So another word for that is mental proliferation. Right? The mind wanders off, and when the mind wanders off, the funny thing is it always makes us very self-centered. It's all about me, I, me and mine. So we have to see how that happens and how we can overcome that. And basically to learn the 4 focuses of introspection. My teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji, calls these the 4 focuses of introspection, Satipatthana. Now this is often translated as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Basically they're talking about the same thing, but I think the word 4 focuses of introspection is more specific, right? And it's a little bit more technical, so that I can explain what it really means later on. And all that to help us calm our emotions and overcome this self-centeredness, and that will help us cultivate a more wholesome, harmonious and happier life. So that is basically the essence of today's sharing, how we can manifest a more peaceful and harmonious life. We have to understand the basic essence of what is dukkha. And dukkha is often translated as suffering, but there are also other words associated with that, which actually makes it easier to understand, because very often people, especially people not so well versed with the teachings of the Buddha, they will then say, oh, Buddhism is so negative, so pessimistic. It's always talking about suffering. Well, the word suffering sounds a bit strong, so I sometimes like to use the word dissatisfactoriness, stress and distress. All that really in a nutshell is a kind of suffering. And how do we suffer? Human beings suffer easily because human beings are the only species in the world that regrets the past, right, and is fearful of the future and never satisfied with the present moment. We do that all the time, constantly. We think about the past, and often from time to time we think about things that, things that went wrong. We will say, oh, why did I experience that? And that is a kind of dissatisfactoriness, a kind of regret. Even thinking about the good things of the past, we say, oh, why is it over? Why is my hair now getting whiter and less? Think of the good side. When your hair is getting lesser, it means you save money on shampoo, right? All right, so basically, and then we look into the future, our imagination takes us to places we find, it brings us fear. Because fear of the unknown is one of those things that we always encounter. We are fearful of the unknown. And when we look at the present, one of the things is that we have to learn, and the Buddha taught this very well. Even right at the beginning, this was one of the first things the Buddha taught, to be grateful for what we have. But we are seldom there. We are always looking at things where we find it is not what we want. Dissatisfactoriness. Actually, gratitude is the first lesson that the Buddha taught, because when the Buddha first became awakened, right, he spent 7 weeks going around the Bodhi tree where he became awakened. And during that stage, he was even staring at the Bodhi tree with unblinking eyes. So the Buddha actually taught that as the first lesson, a tree. And yet the Buddha was grateful for the tree, right? Gratitude to the tree. So be grateful for your blessings, anything around you, because the tree provided him shelter. The tree helped him to attain a level of peacefulness. So for us, there are many things around us we can be grateful for. And that would reduce our level of dissatisfactoriness if we learn to be more grateful for the things we have. So all that points to basically the mind. Now the word mind is quite daunting to try to understand. What is the mind? If you ask 10 psychologists, what is the mind? You are likely to get 10 different answers. Because there is no common consensus. What is the mind? But more and more scientists, the neuroscientists, are beginning to explore how the brain works. And in exploring and experimenting how the brain works, they begin to get a clearer and clearer understanding of the mind. And these are the scientists that are beginning to explain a bit more about the mind. But the amazing thing about that is that whatever explanation they're coming up with today are becoming more and more consistent with what the Buddha taught 2,600 years ago. So you could say the Buddha was the first neuroscientist. The Buddha was the first psychologist. The Buddha was the first psychotherapist. Right? So let's take a look at what the Buddha said about the mind. He described the mind as an activity, and an activity is an experience. Anything that goes on, happens, that is an experience. We are there to experience it. So he described the mind in three parts. There are three parts of this mental experience. The first one he calls vijnana. Vijnana is the arising of a perception every time we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch anything with our senses. That means when light enters the eye, sound enters the ear, and our hand comes into contact with objects, a perception arises in the mind, and that is vijnana, perception. Now, some people translate vijnana as consciousness. Unfortunately, again, the scientists have no consensus about the meaning of the word consciousness. Consciousness can mean so many different things. You can ask different scientists, what is the meaning of consciousness? You're probably going to get different answers. And not only different answers, the way they answer you, you're going to get mighty confused because they go deep into whatever explanations they want to. But in a nutshell, if you look at consciousness in terms of being aware of objects around you, then vijnana is consciousness at that level. But consciousness can go much deeper than that. Consciousness can take it to the level where you become aware of a world around you, activities going on around you. And then consciousness can go even one level further than that. Because being aware of activities around you is called objective experience. But one level deeper than that is the subjective experience. You begin to aware there is this experience that's going on inside. And this is what makes us self-centered. This experience going on inside. Because when you see something, do you say, these eyes see that person? No. You say, I see him. You see, the I arises. When you touch something, do you say, my hands touch this object? We don't say that. What do we say? Oh, I touch this object, the I. The I, me, and mine is constantly arising. Right? So vijnana is basically the awareness of what you have seen, heard, smelled, taste, and touch. A perception arises, a mental image arises in your mind and continuously flowing. The mind is basically a continuous flow of mental images. One of the great neuroscientists, Antonio Damasio, he's a very experienced scientist exploring emotions, and he described the mind as a continuous flow of mental images. And images is not just visual images, but it could be image of a sound, image of what you touch. So the word image means the perception of what you have seen, heard, smelled, taste, and touch, what you have perceived. So this is the first part of a mental experience. And with that, the mind begins to interpret. So that is what the Buddha calls the second part, mano. Mano is the part of the mind that tries to interpret what has been perceived through the sense organs. And this interpretation categorizes them, groups them together, generalizes them. We always generalize things. We don't look at things very specifically. Because if I were to pick up this and ask you, what is this? Everybody would basically say this is a mouse. Right? Now, why do you call this a mouse? Many of you have only seen this for the first time because you've not seen this particular mouse before. And yet you call it a mouse. Why? Because you have categorized this to be one of the many different kinds of mouse around you. Right? So we see so many mouse objects of a mouse in different computers, and yet we categorize them. So we like to categorize things, and it is in this process that we give meaning. Right? And then the third thing, at the same time, everything we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch, there is some kind of a sensation. And that sensation leads to a feeling of whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. When you hear loud noise, that is naturally unpleasant. When you see bright light, that is naturally unpleasant. Why do I say naturally? It's because they irritate the sense organs. They irritate the nervous system. Right? And that is why it is unpleasant. It has nothing to do with liking or not liking. Because liking or not liking is an emotional reaction that comes later. So at this point in time, when you sense something, it irritates your nervous system or it soothes your nervous system, then that feeling is either pleasant or unpleasant. Like for example, dim light soothes the nervous system, right? And green or blue light soothes the nervous system. Soft, low pitched tone like a drum soothes the nervous system. High pitched sound irritates the nervous system. We don't realize it, but it happens all the time. So we're constantly exposed to all these things around us. So we are constantly experiencing all kinds of pleasant and unpleasant sensations, and we react to it. It is the reaction that leads us to whether we like it or don't like it. Thank you. For example, there are kids, youngsters, who get so used to listening to loud music, they love to listen to loud music. But for many of us, especially the age group I see around here, we don't like music that is too loud, right? Some kids like very loud guitar, twangy sounds. And to us, the twangy sound can be very irritating. We don't like it, you see? But the funny thing is this twangy sound do irritate the nervous system. But it's just that our reaction, our emotional reaction, tanha, the way we react to it, or some call this craving. Some people like it, some people hate it. Right? And that reaction is emotional. Right? So basically the Buddha described that to be the mind, the three parts of mental experience. Vijnana, the perception arising from what we see, hear, smell, taste and touch. Mano, the process of cognition, the interpretation of what we have perceived through sense organs. And Chitta basically is the emotion. One thing about the emotion, whenever this emotion is aroused, we become self-centered. Because we personalize every experience. Like I said, we see something, we say, I see. The word I pops up. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. When you see your friend, oh, I see him. What is the first word that comes to your mind? I. That's it. I, me, and mine. We always personalize every experience. So if we're not careful, this emotional arousal can lead to a lot of suffering. Because the Buddha pointed out very clearly, emotions dominate the world. Emotion create distress. Now distress here means mental suffering. Right? Stress, now I call stress as the physical suffering, distress as the mental suffering. So emotion create mental suffering, distress. Emotion is the one thing to which all are spellbound. Because once emotion takes over, we are controlled by emotion. We're spellbound by it. Right? Now, one thing I want to point out very commonly, and it's an unfortunate thing, it's not a criticism, but it is an unfortunate common practice. When Western translators translated the Pali into English, they don't differentiate what the Buddha meant with those three different words, vijnana, mano, chitta. So whenever they see the word mano and they see the word chitta, they just translate it as mind. So when you see mind, it's a bit difficult to really appreciate what the Buddha was saying. Here, the Buddha was not just talking about the mind as a whole. The Buddha was very specific. The Buddha was talking about chitta, chittena, the process of chitta. And that is emotion. The Buddha was talking about emotional. It is our emotional reaction, tanha, that leads to a lot of suffering. And the other word, mano, the first verse of the Dhammapada, right? Mano pubangama dhamma. What was the first word? Mano. What did the Buddha mean? The Buddha meant our thinking mind, our intellect, our ability to think is how we can change our life. It is using this ability to think, the intellect, the cognition. Cognition precedes all experience, and cognition predominates and creates our realities. The way we think creates our reality. This is really what the Buddha meant. Not just the word mind, because this is always translated as mind. Mind precedes all phenomena. This is a common translation. So the word mind can be very daunting. So I hope when you read any sutra in English, make an effort to explore what is the Pali word behind it, especially when you see the word mind. Because the Buddha is always very specific, either talking about the emotions or the cognition. The emotional mind or the thinking mind. Right? So when we look at how we experience from a flowchart point of view, everything that is going around our environment stimulate our sense organ, and then perception arises, vijnana, right? The awareness of objects. This is our ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. With that, the mind begins to interpret, and we always interpret in a categorized manner by drawing from past memory. If we see something that we have seen before, similar to what we've seen before, we know what it is. We can appreciate it. But sometimes we see things we have never seen before, nothing similar, and then we start to be confused. What is this? We don't know. So all this is because the mind likes to draw on memory from past experience to try to interpret what was seen. And at the same time, everything we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch comes with a sensational feeling of whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, which arouses, which either irritates or soothes the nervous system. And because of that, we begin to react with our chitta, our emotional reaction. Whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, it actually causes a biochemical reaction in the body. Right? And that biochemical reactions in the body causes this physical tension, stressor. And this tension is called stress. That's what I call dukkha, stress, the physical change in the body because of the hormones. Now, every time we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch something, there is hormonal changes. We don't realize it. Now, I can very simply describe a simple word, asam laksa. Some of you will start to feel sourness in your mouth. Now, for those of you who have no reaction, there could be two reasons. One is that you don't know what is asam laksa. You've never tasted it before, but I guess all of you are locals, so you would have. And the other one could be you're not sensitive to your bodily change. Sensitivity to your bodily change is what we're learning from Satipatthana. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, the very first foundation, the very first focus of introspection is to teach us to be aware of bodily changes. Kayanu pasana, the body changes. Observe what goes on in the body. Right? So when this is a bodily change. This is a physiological disturbance we call stress. And it leads us into this fight or flight reaction. What is fight or flight? If it is something that disturbs us, that arouses us, we either want to overcome it, we fight, or we want to run away from it, we flight. So fight or flight. Either we want to overcome it or we run away. For example, you walk down the street and somebody comes up to you and tries to rob you with a little knife and asks you to hand over the wallet. There are 2 things you can do. For ladies, you can use your handbag and smack him on the head. That is called fighting. Or some of you turn around and run. That is called flight. Right? So fight or flight. We react. So every time we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch something, a message is sent from the brain down our spinal cord to the rest of the body, right? To our sympathetic nervous system. And it reaches various glands. When it reaches the adrenal gland releases 2 powerful hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And they actually cause a lot of changes in the body. What kind of changes? It causes your heart to beat faster, blood pressure to rise. It causes your respiration to deepen. It causes your intestinal movement to suspend digestion. And it causes your muscles to all tense up. And then it also does other things. It causes your hair to stand on end. Some people call this goose pimples or goosebumps, the hair standing on end. It also causes your pupils to dilate. That means it opens up, try to see what is the thing that is affecting you. And then it causes facial expression changes, tensed up. When we get excited, our facial expression change. Nobody gets excited and go, people get excited, or we get angry. Yeah, all these are facial expression changes. And then perspiration, trembling, and bodily changes. And the worst thing is that it increases blood sugar. And it also suspends your immune system. If you look at all this, it is extremely unhealthy. What happens when your immune system is suspended? You fall sick easily. What happens if your blood sugar rises? You become diabetic. What happens if your body trembles too much? You lose body heat and your dehydration. What happens if your facial expression distorts too much? You get wrinkles on the face. What happens if your pupils dilate too much? Well, your eyesight weakens as you age. What happens when your hair stands on end too often? Sooner or later, there's no more hair to stand on end. Right? What happens if your muscles get all tensed up? Every week you have to go for your tuina. You go for your massage to relax your body because your muscle is all tensed up, you got to learn to relax. And the intestinal system suspended, then your ulcer gets worse, and then your heart beats faster, and then blood pressure rises, you experience hypertension. So see how unhealthy it is when we get stressed. This is stress, physical suffering. It happens automatically even to the best of us. No matter how well we train our mind, the body will react. And it's only a matter of whether we are sensitive to it. For those people who practice Satipatthana, you will be very sensitive to it. For the most of us who never practice Satipatthana, then we may not be sensitive to that thing going on. Right? So this is the bodily change, the physical stress that's going on. Now, along with this bodily change, it arouses the chitta one more time. The chitta was first aroused by sensation that is pleasant and unpleasant. Now the chitta is aroused by bodily changes, the bodily sensation. And this is very unpleasant. No matter whether you are experiencing something blissful or some, roller coaster ride that makes you very happy, or experiencing something that is stressful, this bodily change arouses the chitta one more time. And this time, when the chitta gets aroused, what does it do? It draws up memory, imagination, expectation. Memory of past experiences, imagination of the future, and expectation of the present. And this leads to three kinds of attitudes, three kinds of conditions, right? Or three kinds of tanha, they would call it. Lobha, dosa, moha. Lobha is basically when something pleasant is experienced, you want more of it. That is lobha. The greed and lust for something pleasant. And dosa is the aversion and hatred for something that is unpleasant. And dosa is basically, the moha is basically the delusion that there is a self-centered existence. We say, oh, this body is experiencing me, and then we often think this body is me. Every experience is going on in the mind, not in the body. The body is just an agent to carry signals from the environment into the brain process, and then the activity of the brain is the mind, and that is where the experience is. So does the body experience things from the environment, or does the mind? Right? Think about that one. So basically this leads to mental proliferation. With imagination, we become fearful of the future. With memory, we become regretful of the past. With expectations, we try to change the present, and we know we can't change the present. The present is what has already happened as a result of everything that happened in the past. So we can't change it. And this leads to mental proliferation. And this mental proliferation is very self-centered. So today we're trying to learn how that happens and how we can overcome that through the practice of Satipatthana. If we're not careful, this mental proliferation disturbs your thinking mind, disturbs your cognition, disturbs your ability to think rationally. And because of that, you are always making decisions based on emotions. That's why when we have things going on around us, we get emotional. Our decisions are 99% emotional because of this condition here, disturbing the thinking mind. Right? And when that happens, the mind is being torn in two directions, thinking and feeling. Feeling is the emotional part. We react based on how we feel, but we are not thinking. Right? So the thinking tells you this is to be avoided. For example, a very tasty kind of food. The thinking says to you that durian is a classic example. Most of us love durian. So our thinking mind says to us, is durian healthy? Will durian improve your immune system and your health? The real answer, never. In fact, it destroys your health. And yet, that is thinking. We know that. But feeling, oh, I love durian. We're going to have a durian party this weekend. That's the feeling part. Pulling in opposite direction. The thinking knows that durian is not healthy, but we ignore the thinking. For heaven's sake, how many of you think about how unhealthy durian is every time you go to a durian party? Nobody. We just go there and enjoy. That is the feeling part. That's why when thinking and feeling are pulling in opposite direction, feeling wins. 99.9% of the time. Right? So this is really what's going on inside us, and this is what brings us all kinds of suffering. Physical suffering in terms of health, mental suffering in terms of our emotional composure. So if we're not careful, we allow this to go on, it gets worse. And the Buddha pointed out very, very strongly here, self-affliction of mental suffering. And he said that whatever harm an enemy may do to another, or a hater may do to another, it is our own ill-directed emotions. Our own ill-directed emotions that inflict upon ourselves a greater level of harm. Right? And what did he mean by ill-directed emotions? It is the way we think, the mental proliferation from imagination, memory, and expectations. And this is what we have to learn to overcome. Overcoming this is called emotional composure. Composing it, bringing the emotion to a level of quietness, stillness, and peace. And then we will enjoy a more peaceful and healthier life. So when all this is going on, we got stress, physical suffering, and we got distress. Now distress, the mental suffering, is called domanassa. And we have this distress going on. What can we do? We can use our thinking mind, right, to realize something is going on. And then the first realization is that it's going on in the body, because the body is your early warning system. When something changes in the body, that is an early warning system. For example, when somebody comes from behind you and tap you on the shoulder and then you get spooked, that is an early warning system that your body is now releasing hormones. Right? So your body, the reactions of the body is the early warning system. So the first thing we have to be aware of is this very first foundation of mindfulness, or the first focus of introspection, the bodily changes. Be conscious of bodily conditions. What kind of conditions? Your heart rate, heart beating faster, your breathing deepening, then your jaw, tongue, this jaw area, it tenses up very quickly the moment we get excited. And facial expression is also one of the first things that tense up. And vocal expression, two things happen to your voice. One, it gets louder. Second, the pitch goes up. Right? When we get excited, our voice pitch goes up. If you don't believe me, just remember the times when you get excited. Your voice pitch goes up. The voice goes higher and higher and higher, you know. When you get excited, your voice doesn't go low and deep. It doesn't happen like that. It goes the other way. And then fist and arm tension, you know, you get all tensed up. And then also the neck and shoulders very uncomfortable. And your upper back, your lower back, and even body temperature. All these things are early warning system that your body is entering in a very unhealthy state. Simple as that. Do something about it. The moment you feel these things, do something about it. Right? What can you do? 3 simple steps of self-compassion. First, think. Right? First, pause, relax, and think. Pause means when you realize your body is now excited, don't do anything. Stop. Don't react. Don't say anything. Don't do anything, because that reaction is bound to be emotional. So learn to stop, pause, and then relax. What is relax? Take a deep breath. Just calm down. Let your body calm down first, and then your mind will calm down. Your mind will follow, right? And then only you think about what you have to do. So these are the 3-step self-compassion. Pause. What does pause do? Pause allows time for emotional excitement and anxiety to subside, right, to calm down, and all these hormonal reactions in the body, the chemical changes, allow them to subside. It's like turning off a hot plate. When you switch off a hot plate, electrical hot plate, right, and the plate is still hot, it takes a while before it cools down, even though you have switched it off. The same thing with your body. When you begin to pause, it's like switching off the hot plate, but your body still has hormones that has been released. It takes a little time for it to wear off. How fast? Now, for most people who have not trained their mind well enough, it won't take so long. 1 minute, 2 minutes, worst case, 5 minutes. If you pause, all that will wear off within a matter of minutes if you're not well trained. But if you train your mind well, when you pause, within seconds, you can be very calm. The hormones will subside very quickly. If you really pause, but many of us don't learn to pause. We get excited and we react. We learn to react too much. Together with pausing, that means don't react, don't do anything, don't say anything. Now you begin to relax. One of the easiest things to do to relax is to take a deep breath. Right? Take a deep breath, relax the body, and consciously compose the mind. Now your mind becomes more composed, because with the pausing part, your body begins to calm down. With the relaxation part, your mind begins to calm down. And then when your mind has calmed down, after a while, that is the time you're ready to think. You're ready to introspect, to realize what is it that you need to do. Purposefully focus on wholesome and beneficial response to the problem, so that you can respond to it and you can actually do something about it in a positive and wholesome way. Pause, relax, and think. Very simple. Now, a lot of people overlook the first two, the pause and the relax part. They think that, oh, when I get emotional, I can just think rationally. That doesn't happen. A lot of people think they can do that. When you get emotional, you must allow that emotion to subside before you think, because your thinking is going to be disturbed by the emotions. So, breathing is very, very useful. And this is why one of the first thing that Buddha teach about meditation is anapanasati. And come this August 20th, you get a chance to learn it from Susila, right? So, benefits of breathing. It is the most critically overlooked relaxation tool. And it is also the fastest way to relax the body and calm the mind. We don't realize that. What does it do? It increases natural unforced oxygen intake, which is actually energy to the cells. It stabilizes your heart rate and your blood pressure. And it regulates your body temperature and blood circulation. And it restores and maintains a level of stability in the body called homeostasis. So the body becomes more stable. And then there is a part of your brain called the amygdala. When that amygdala is aroused, every time you experience something pleasant or unpleasant, the amygdala gets aroused. So it actually helps to calm that amygdala, that part of the brain. Because the amygdala is your fear control center. The moment it is aroused, it actually causes you to react irrationally. So that is the part of your fear control center. Calms the amygdala by indicating an absence of threat, because when you're able to breathe normally, happily, then the body thinks that, oh, everything is fine, and then the amygdala will not react. So this is actually very useful exercise. Pause, relax by breathing, and then only you think about what you have to do. Otherwise, you will be disturbed by mental proliferation. So, pausing is relaxing the body through conscious relaxation. Don't do anything consciously. Say, no, I'm not going to react right now. I'm not going to say a word. Just pause and relax. By relaxing the body, biochemical activities in the body subside. Tension in the body eases off. Now your body becomes more comfortable. And the mind no longer disturbed by tensions in the body. Because it's very important. A relaxed body is an absolute necessary condition for a calm mind. If your body cannot relax, you will have great difficulty calming your mind. So the first thing you should do in order to calm your mind is to relax the body. And this is a very helpful hint for those of you who are new to meditation. Before you begin your meditation session, make sure that you are seated in a comfortable manner, with your back upright, not leaning back on the wall, with your back upright. And then allow your whole body to just relax. And this is very important, because then only you can begin to meditate successfully. If your body is not relaxed, if you're seated in a very awkward position, then your body is disturbing the mind. Then you cannot meditate properly. So a relaxed body is an absolute necessary condition for a calm mind. And how do you calm the mind? It is bring your attention inwards. This is called introspective attention. This is the essence of Satipatthana. Bring your attention inwards. Relaxed body suggests an absence of threat, and conscious focused attention in the present moment. What's going on inside your mind right now, this present moment? What is your mind doing? Right? What emotions are being aroused? What thoughts are arising? Be aware of it. And by being aware of it, your mind doesn't run away. You are now observing the mind, you're watching the mind, so it doesn't run away. It is when you're not watching the mind, you're not observing the mind, that the mind runs away. It's like having your little dog, walking your dog in the evening. If you have your dog on a leash, your dog is not going to run away. But if you just unlatch the leash, you're not watching your dog, what do you think your dog's going to do? Stand next to you? No, it's going to run away. Same with your mind. If you're not observing the mind runs away. The mind goes into all kinds of mental proliferation. So by observing, then you are minimizing this mental proliferation. And then there is no further arousal of biochemical reactions in the body. So this is a very important step. When you pause and you relax, this is what happens. The first one, when you pause, you are breaking this biochemical reaction. The second one, when you calm your mind, you are avoiding mental proliferation. So now that takes us to the Satipatthana proper. Satipatthana, well, I explained this in the first part. Now the second part, I'm going to take it one step further. Satipatthana is a very useful psychotherapeutic tool. Unfortunately, the word Satipatthana has been commonly translated as mindfulness. I say unfortunate because the word mindfulness, again, means so many different things to so many different people. You ask, especially in the West, you ask any so-called mindfulness guru, they're all giving you different explanation what is mindfulness. There are even people applying this in business, applying this to help you make more money, how you go into the share market and earn more through mindfulness. They're even teaching this to the snipers, how to kill people with one bullet in a very mindful way. Mindfully killing someone with one bullet. One life, one bullet. Mindfulness. But that is not what the Buddha taught. So what did the Buddha teach about mindfulness? Well, Satipatthana, the real word, is derived from three root words as explained by my teacher, Venerable Dr. Punaji. Sati is basically attention, we all know that. The other two words, upa. Upa means within, not outside, but inside, within. And Thana, Thana is to focus or to place, right? Basically to direct, to focus, to place. So, Sati Upa Thana is Satipatthana. What does it mean? It means to place your attention within, inside you, not looking at what goes on outside. Because what goes on outside are all your senses. You cannot trust your senses. Because your senses will actually pick up information that may be very easily distorted. So, look within. That's really what Satipatthana means. Look within. And there are 4 areas of focuses to look within. Right? 4 focuses of introspection. Looking within is called introspection. It comes from 2 root words, English root word. Intro. As you all know, intro, like an introverted person. What is an introverted person? A person who keeps to himself, within. Not extro. Extroverted person is one who runs around, right, doing things externally. So internally, intro. Spection comes from the word inspection, examining, observing, right? Not analyzing. Don't try to analyze because you can't analyze. For all you care, you can never analyze your own mind. Just observe by looking in. That's it. Introspection. 4 focuses. The first one is the body, and this is called Kayanupassana. I've already explained that, how the body reacted. The second one is that feeling. And this is not whether you like or don't like something. This has to do with bodily sensation. Observe this bodily sensation, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, whether it is agitating or it is soothing, right? And then the third one, all this will trigger some kind of emotional arousal. Now observe how your emotions have been aroused. Observe the emotional states that arise. And when the emotional states arise, they disturb your thinking, right? So the first one, bodily, is Kayanupassana. The second one, feeling, is Vedananupassana. The third one, affection, which is your emotion, is the Chittanupassana, observing the Chitta. See, now again, I point out to you, very importantly, that the word Chitta, the Buddha meant emotions. So Chittanupassana is observing emotions. A lot of people translate this, now I don't mean this to be a criticism or challenging anything, but a lot of people translate chitta as mind. It just says, observe your mind. This is not about mind as a whole. This is about your emotional states specifically. Observe emotional states, Chittanupassana. And then, Dhammanupassana, the fourth one, it is commonly translated as observing mind objects. But it is not mind objects, because what is a mind object? It becomes very confusing. What are you observing? What it is observing is conception, how your thoughts are formed. You see, how your emotions are affected, Chittanupassana. How your thoughts arise, how your thoughts are formed, concepts, that is Dhammanupassana. The interpretation of your circumstances, past, present and future. And that leads to the way you think. If you're not careful about the way you think, then your mind will go into mental proliferation. These are the two things, two parts that are easily disturbed by memory, imagination, expectation. Right? If you really want to know now, to be more extreme, the greatest enemy in your mind is your memory, your imagination, and your expectation. Think about it. All the suffering in the world that you've ever experienced came from your memory, imagination, and the last one, expectations. They lead to great suffering. Right? So these are the four focuses of introspection, also popularly translated as the four foundations of mindfulness. Let's look at each one specifically. The first two deals with the body, how the body works. First is the reaction of the body and then the sensations in the body. The next two deals with the mind, how the mind is aroused and what happens when the mind gets aroused. One of the greatest ways to overcome stress, as pointed out by this great psychologist, William James, is that the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. See, the mind works with two streams, right? There is an upper level, like you think of a river. A river has the upper surface, upper stream, and then there is an undercurrent going on underneath. The mind works like that. The emotion is the one that is the undercurrent. What happens in the undercurrent, it stirs up a lot of mud from the floor of the river, and it's very muddy. Whereas the top may look very calm, but the bottom is very muddy. So these muddy things are thoughts arising, constantly popping up, distracting you. The upper is the ability of the mind to choose, to pay attention. The sati of your mind, the ability to pay attention, to choose your thoughts. So the ability to choose your thoughts will help you overcome stress. The moment you feel body is stressed, choose good thoughts. You know, it's your choice. You can choose good thoughts. But very often we don't choose. We give up that choosing and allow our emotions to choose for us. So the bottom line is very simple. Either you choose your thoughts, which allows you to choose good thoughts, or you allow your thoughts to choose you, which is often always emotional. Which one do you want to do? Choose your thoughts or allow your thoughts to choose you, right? So, when we observe the body, this is what goes on. First, things going on around us, stimulating our sense organs, and then perception arises, and then body changes. So what is Kayanupassana? Kayanupassana is observing this bodily change. What is going on in the body? The heart is beating faster, the breathing is deepening, right? So this is observe the physical manifestation of the reaction in the body as disturbances or reactions in the body, basically. So this is Kayanupassana. And what are you observing? You're observing things like your heart rate, your breathing, your tensions, jaw, tongue, facial expressions, and all these changes in the body. That's what you are observing. Kayanupassana. Now, I'm going to let my teacher explain to you, Venerable Dr. Punaji. So,
the first part is what we call the physical manifestation of the reaction. The physical manifestation of the reaction. That means when you react to what you see, the first thing is your body has changed. I told you, when an emotion is aroused, it is not just a thought, it is a complete change in the body. When the emotion is aroused, the body is changed. And that change in the body can be observed. When you become angry, your body changes and you can see the change in the body, either in the form of tensions or the heart beating faster or the breathing becoming heavier, all these different things that are happening in the body. And that observing the body is what is called kayanupassana. Kaya means the body. So when we speak about kayanupassana, it is not just looking at the body, you are looking at the physical manifestation of the reaction.
So first is to observe this physical manifestation of the reaction, how the body has changed. This is really the physical suffering, dukkha or stress. And this leads to a sensation in the body. Now there is a sensation in the body. Now for those of you who didn't feel the sensation in the body earlier on, when I said asam laksa, I'm going to make you feel it, something now. Imagine when we were young, we went to school, those days they didn't have whiteboard and marker pen. What did they have? Blackboard and chalk. And then there are some kids, when the teacher writes on the blackboard, it makes a funny sound. Squeak, 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 squeak. And then there are some kids very naughty with very long nails. You know what they like to do? Scratch the blackboard and it goes. How many of you are now feeling sensations in your body? That is the sensation in the body. This is the second part. Observing your sensations in the body. Vedanānupassana. Vedana comes from the word Vedana. Vedana it means this bodily feeling. Vedana is sometimes, some people have translated that as an emotional feeling, and it is not. My teacher pointed out very clearly, Vedana is free from emotion at this point in time. Vedana is this bodily sensation, this feeling that arouses your nervous system. Whether it soothes your nervous system or it irritates your nervous system. Simple example of what irritates your nervous system. Red light irritates the nervous system. Bright light irritates the nervous system. Loud sounds irritate the nervous system. High-pitched sound irritate the nervous system. Right? Dim light, green, blue, dim light soothes the nervous system. Soft tones, low-pitched sound soothes the nervous system. So this is the irritation or the soothing of the nervous system. That is Vedanānupassana. So observe the manifestation of feelings, of sensations in the body, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, in terms of pain, pleasure, agitation, calm, comfort and discomfort. That is Vedanānupassana. And I'll let my teacher explain this to you.
And then it is not only the physical manifestation of the reaction, you also become aware of how the body feels. You'll also observe that the body begins to feel uncomfortable, really. When the emotion is aroused, the body is not comfortable. That change in the body is uncomfortable. Then you observe that as a feeling, and that is called Vedanānupassana. That is called Vedanānupassana.
So Vedanānupassana is to observe this sensation of how the body has reacted. Every reaction in the body, there is a sensation. So, and where with this sensation here, it triggers memory, imagination, expectation, leading the mind to various emotional states. And this is now observing the mind. And that is, and with this emotional state that is aroused, it actually disturbs your thinking. And therefore you have to learn to observe how this emotional state is aroused. Observing this arousal of this emotional state is Cittanupassana, to observe the manifestation of emotional excitement and the arousal of emotional states, And it leads you to certain emotional states like fear, anger, anxiety, lust, hatred, grief, sorrow, despair, and so on. Various emotional states. What kind of emotions are being aroused after experiencing that bodily change and the sensations? Now what kind of emotions are being aroused? That is Cittanupassana.
You become aware of the emotion that is aroused. Whether it is anger, or whether it is fear, or whether it is a sensual lust, passion, or whether it is a worry, whatever the emotion that has been aroused, you become aware of it. That is the third step. That is called Cittanupassana. I told you the word Chitta really refers to the emotion, not just the mind. I pointed out that there are two parts of the mind. One is the emotional part and the other is the thinking part, which is mainly the activity of the brain, the thinking that is going on in the brain.
So Cittanupassana is to observe emotional states that are being aroused. Very unfortunate, the word Cittanupassana was translated as observing the mind. Now, the mind is so complex. How on earth are you going to be easily observing the mind? It is really emotional states. So if we're not careful about these emotional states, what will it do for us? It will lead to mental proliferation. Mental proliferation is when the mind goes into different directions and allowing thoughts to choose you. You're no longer choosing your thoughts. This is like the river, the undercurrent, all the mud that is being stirred up in the undercurrent. And these are 17 thinking traps. Now, cognitive psychologists call this cognitive distortion. Actually, this is based on the research work by two very famous cognitive psychologists, Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis. They came up with 15. Billy Tan came up with the last two. So there are now 17, right? The last two is based on Buddhist thoughts, Buddhist philosophy. So what are these 17? The first one, mind reading. No, we're very good at mind reading. We like to think, we like to know what other people are thinking. We always like to figure out what other people are thinking. We don't figure out what we are thinking ourselves. We're very good at that, figuring out what other people are thinking, imagining what others are thinking about you and about your circumstances without clarifying. The second one is fortune telling. We're very good at that also. We like to predict things. Predicting things, often we predict the worst things. We seldom predict good things. We often predict unhappy things. The third one is generalization. We lump it all together, right? Making sweeping assumptions. Everything is the same, So statements without supporting evidence. And then the fourth one is discounting positives. Even in the worst situation, there are always positive things going on. So we overlook that. We don't care about the positive things. We overlook at the worst things, discounting positives. Then the other extreme is we filter out the negatives. Right? We only want to look at focusing on and amplifying the negatives. This is negative filtering, number 5. Number 6, black and white thinking, called dichotomous thinking, extremist thinking. Either all or nothing. You are either my friend or you are my enemy. Nothing in between. Or you either love me or you hate me. Wives say that to a lot. A lot of wives say that to their husband. You either love me or you hate me. So extremist thinking, always or never. These are extremist thinking. Number 7, perfectionist thinking. We live in 3 modes. The first one is a should. I'll explain the other 2 later. Our mind is often living in 3 modes. The first one is should. Everything should be like that, should be like this. That is perfectionist thinking. Expecting things to be ideal and perfect. It should be like this. Next one is righteousness. Righteousness basically prioritizing truth, ethics, and what is moral standards over human consideration. What are these? There are some simple examples. You go to the market, Pasar Malam, and you see this little boy. steal somebody's bread and run away. And then you catch him. Now, righteous thinking is to say this boy has stolen something, he deserves to be punished because he has stolen something or he deserves a lesson. So you catch him. Now, basically you're using ethics and moral standards to act. But do you know what goes on behind the scene? He could be having 3 or 4 brothers right in the corner, starving, with nothing to eat, and he was stealing that piece of bread to feed his brothers. Now that you have caught him, he's unable to feed his brothers. So what have you done? You are using righteous action, moral standards, and overlook the human consideration. See, this is an example. Just a simple example. So that is righteousness number 8. Number 9, magnification or catastrophizing. Blowing things out of proportion. Overemphasizing on the very specific details and then blow things out of proportion to make it sound big, you know. Number 10, minimization, the other extreme. There are important aspects of any circumstances, but we overlook the important thing. We shrink them, we minimize them. Finally, number 11 is unfair comparison. And a lot of parents do this, especially parents from rural areas. Then they say, when the child comes home from school and say, Mama, I got 3 distinctions. Oh, the mother is very happy. Next minute, you hear the neighbor comes back and say, he's got 8 distinctions. And then you get angry and say, why are you so stupid? Next door neighbor get 8 distinctions, you only get 3 distinctions. You go to the same class, he can get 8 distinctions. Why can't you get 8? Why are you so stupid you get only 3? That is an unfair comparison, right? We do that all the time. We compare. You know, there are 3 things we always compare. We compare, 3 C's, bad C's. We compare, we compete, and when we get what we want, we become conceited, self-centered, right? So that is unfair comparison. Now, I mentioned to you that we live in 3 modes. The first one was should. The second one is if. What if? You know, we always live in this mode called what if? What if this had happened? What if that could be different? What if? Over-intellectualizing. So these are 12 of the 17. Moving on, number 13, the blame game. We always like to point fingers. And everyone knows when you point your finger out, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. You know, we always like to blame other people for things going on. Finding faults in others and blaming others. This is for people who are very egoistic. Then the other extreme for people who may be lacking in self-confidence and lacking in self-esteem, they practice number 14, shame, guilt. They always think that they are responsible for everything that goes wrong. Oh, I'm the one who always makes a mistake. Finding faults in oneself and blaming oneself. Either one of these can bring us great suffering. What is the solution? The solution is to learn to forgive. Forgive other people for whatever they have done wrong to you. Forgive yourself for having done something wrong to yourself. And then the third direction, forgive yourself for having done something wrong to the people you love. 3 directions of forgiveness. And then you can overcome number 13, number 14. Number 15, emotional reasoning. Everything that happens, we begin to then connect it with our feelings, how we feel about it. And then we make decisions based on emotions. Emotional reasoning. Right? Allowing feelings and emotions to guide our decision making. Those are the 15 that cognitive psychologists came up with. I added 2 more, which is very much talked about in a lot of the sutras. Believing is seeing. We think that we are living in a mode called seeing is believing. That means we see something that is real and then we believe and accept it. That's not what we do. We live in a mode called believing and seeing. When we begin to have a certain beliefs, if we see some evidence that support that beliefs, we will strongly hold on to that evidence. If we see the evidence that is challenging or discounting our beliefs, we will reject the evidence. Because we will hold on to our beliefs. Holding on to our views and our beliefs is one of the things that the Buddha taught us to avoid. But we hold on to views, and when we hold on to views, we will greatly blow up small little things that support our views, and we will completely reject whatever evidence that will disprove our views. And then number 17, past orientation. And this is the third mode we live in. The first mode was should, the second is if, and the third is living in the past. We love to live in the past, right? and letting past experiences guide our decision making. Nothing wrong with learning from the past, but if you allow the past to guide the decision, you're not learning from the past. Learning from the past is to evaluate what has happened in the past and then translate that into a lesson and use that lesson to make wiser decisions. Not necessarily to decide based on the past, right? So the 17 is we always think about what happened to the past, right? Living in the past. So these are 17 cognitive distortions. If you're interested, at the end of this presentation, I have my email address. Drop me a note. I'll send you a copy of all this, right? We have to be responsible for what goes on in our lives. And this psychologist, Viktor Frankl, pointed out, what is responsibility? It is our responsibility, or the ability to respond. And he pointed out very clearly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our responses. In those choices lie our growth and our happiness. What does it mean by between stimulus and response? See, stimulus is something going on around you when something happens. Response is what you do in response to what has happened. So between something happening and when you do something to react or respond, there is a space. Here the space means there is a moment in time. There is a moment you can pause. And it is in that moment that determines your choices. You can choose in that moment. Because if something happens and immediately you respond, you are reacting emotionally. But if something happens and you learn to pause, relax, and then think, and then only respond, you are taking advantage of that space. And in that space lies your freedom and your power to choose, and you can have your growth and happiness from your choices. So it's very important to take advantage of that space. How? Pause, relax, think before you react. So, as I pointed out, the 3-step self-compassion. Pause, relax, and think is a self-compassion. You are being compassionate toward yourself, allowing your emotions to calm down, and then relaxing so that your mind is more composed, and then only think purposefully how to overcome the problem. That will help you cultivate emotional composure. The think part itself is an acronym, and a lot of people have a different version, but I'll show you my version. T, of course, truthful. H is helpful, and the third one, people say inspiring, but I like to use the word improving. Right? So you say T is whether it is something truthful, H is whether it is helpful, I is whether it will improve the situation for you, and N is whether it is necessary, and most importantly, the most important one is the last one, kindness. Is it a kind act or speech? T-H-I-N-K. Kindness also relates to the part I talked about righteousness. When you see this little boy steal something and runs away, right? If you're a very righteous person, you catch him and then hand him over to the police, and then the poor guy goes to jail for a day, and then his brothers and sisters are starving. But kindness is to realize, try to explore what goes on behind the scene and understand and act with kindness, most importantly. Necessary, a lot of people don't practice this one. You know, they speak what they say, what they think, and they may be right, but they don't think that it may not be necessary to say some things sometimes, because even if it is the truth, saying it can hurt other people's feeling. And I get it all the time. Many of my friends who haven't seen me for a while, they look at me and the first thing say, "Hey Billy, you're getting fatter." you know, is it necessary to say that? It may be the truth. It may be the truth, but is it necessary? I mean, it hurts my feeling, you know. Basically that is it necessary. And so it's very important to learn how to cultivate this emotional composure, because if not, this tug of war going on, our emotions will win. And this last part, when you're able to realize that, this last part will help you really to make wise decisions, wholesome intentions, and using skillful means. Dhammanupassana, and that is to observe the manifestation of thoughts and concepts, the interpretation of circumstances, past, present, and future. I'll let my teacher explain this to you. It's a bit long on this one.
Then the next step is to observe the thinking part, which is how you interpreted what you saw or heard or smelled or tasted or touched. Your interpretation of your circumstance. So when you have understood that your emotion was aroused according to the way you interpreted what was occurring in the world around you, then you begin to see that it was this interpretation that started this emotional arousal. And you begin to see that simply as an interpretation, not as a truth or a falsehood, but as an interpretation. And when you see this as an interpretation, then the strength of that interpretation is weakened. And that interpretation could be different. We have only interpreted it in a certain way. We could have interpreted the same thing in a different way. So the validity of the interpretation is lost. And when that happens, the emotional arousal stops. So this way, by becoming aware of this mental process, the mental process which was going on unconsciously, now you have become conscious. You have become conscious of the unconscious process. And when you have become conscious of that unconscious process, the unconscious process stops. It cannot go on consciously. It can go on only unconsciously.
So I hope that it's very clear that Dhammanupassana basically is this observing how you interpreted your circumstances. And then you become clear, because these 17 thinking traps that I pointed out to you are a very useful template. Whenever you're suffering, when you are not able to find a solution, when your mind is completely buried in that problem that you can't get out of, look through the 17 and see which one is affecting you. And then you become aware. And by this awareness, it helps you take your mind out of that mud, because your mind was buried in that mud. By becoming aware of it, your mind can be taken out, and how you can cultivate emotional composure. So the 4 focuses of introspection, the body and the feeling, relates to bodily comfort, and the affection, cittanupassana, the affection or emotion, and the cognition, the manupassana, relates to the emotional composure. So learn to discern your thoughts, and sometimes we have certain thoughts that we have to choose. And now you're in a mode that you want to choose your thoughts. How do you choose what is a good thought, what is not a good thought? Now, what is positive thoughts and what is negative thoughts? I'm drawing from this sutra, Kalama Sutra, which actually has a very important lesson. A lot of people look at Kalama Sutra and look at the other part of it that says, oh, don't listen to him because he's a famous person. Don't listen to him because he's your teacher. Don't listen to him just because it is written in the scriptures, and so on and so forth. A lot of people get distracted by that. But inside the Kalama Sutra, there is a very important lesson. How to choose what is good thoughts and bad thoughts. And that is 4 things, 4 conditions. The first one is, it is wholesome. Free from evil and malicious intent. That means whatever it is you're going to do, you're not actually doing it out of anger, ill will, fear, frustration. You don't have bad intentions. But sometimes, even not having bad intentions, we may do things to hurt other people. And this is where the second one comes in. Whatever it is that you're going to do, is it going to cause suffering to other people? When manifested, does not cause strife or suffering to others. Then it becomes blameless. So first one is wholesome, second one is blameless, and third one is resourceful. Basically, if it is something that you're going to do, will it bring happiness and peace? When developed and undertaken, would it lead to wellness, peace, happiness to self and others? And finally, we had the puja this morning talking about following the wise and staying away from the foolish. Follow the wise, exemplary, right? Praised and practiced by the wise. So, and I get this question very often. When I reach this point, some of you already have this question. Who are the wise? Well, simply put, the wise are the people whose life is filled with the first three. Simple as that. People whose lives are clearly wholesome, blameless, and resourceful. Those are the wise people. So now you know who to follow, right? Look at his life. Is his life wholesome, blameless, and resourceful? That means brings a lot of happiness and joy to himself and family and the people around him. So these are the four things very helpful to use to discern your thoughts. And finally, simple tips. The three things that lead to happiness I pointed out before. Forgiveness. Forgive the past. Gratitude. To be grateful for whatever is going on. And most importantly, kind. These are the three big things. Forgiveness, gratitude, and kindness. And if you can do this, you have the attitude towards this, then you will have a beautiful life. And every moment of your life will be filled with happiness. And in conclusion, emotional excitement gives rise to mental proliferation or cognitive distortions. And imagination, memory, expectation lead to self-centeredness. And incidentally, imagination, I, memory, M, expectation, E. This is what I call the I, me syndrome. Self-centeredness. The I, me syndrome. And applying four focuses of introspection, Satipatthana, to overcome self-centered emotions, cultivate wholesome volitions and skillful actions. And then combine that with those 17 thinking traps. And learn to pause, relax, and think before you react. Right? Applying mindfulness in daily life as a therapeutic solution for a more peaceful and harmonious life. And I would like to end with this metta. We talked about metta this morning. And also Brother Bobby led us in this metta meditation. So simply put, metta is to be able to send love when we see hatred, send forgiveness when we see resentment, send strength when we see weakness, send tranquility when we see chaos, send peace when we see hostility, courage when we see fear, hope when we see despair, comfort when we see pain, kindness when we see cruelty, and finally compassion when we see suffering. May suffering ones be suffering free, the fear-struck fearless be. May grieving ones shed all grief. May all beings find peace and relief. This is how we can cultivate emotional composure in our life in the Buddhist way. Thank you very much. I have my email address there. Anyone interested in a copy of it, please drop me a note. For those of you who are in my mailing list, you don't have to worry about that. I will send it out to you. And also if you're interested in a video of this so that you can refresh yourself, right? I will also send you the link to the first part, which helps you also. So any question, please, from the floor? For the second time. Oh yes, brother, you have a question. Yes, Loba, Dosa, Moha. Okay. The Buddha pointed out that we react in three ways. When we experience something that is pleasant, we want more of it. We feel lustful for pleasant experiences, pleasures. We are feeling lustful and greedy for it. First we lust for it, and when we get it, we become greedy, we want more of it. And some of these pleasures could be material, and some of them can be emotional. So this is the lobha part. So lobha is describing that lust of wanting more of something pleasant. Dosa is then when something unpleasant, something that doesn't feel nice, we want to avoid it, aversion. Now, we can't always avoid everything. Sometimes it keeps coming back, then we hate it when it keeps coming back to us. So aversion and hatred. You see, in the case of lobha, lust turns into greed. When you have lust and you get what you want, you're greedy for more. The second part, the dosa, is aversion turns into hatred. You want to avoid it. Now, if you can't avoid it, it keeps coming back to you. What happens? You hate it. So aversion turns to hatred. So that is the dosa part. The moha part is that whatever it is that we experience, we personalize it and say, oh, this is mine, I, me, and mine. And then we begin to have this delusion that there is this self that is being affected by that experience. The delusion of this self-centered existence. It's all about me, I, me, and mine, the selfishness, self-centeredness. That is the moha part. The delusion of a self-centered existence. Some people just call moha delusion, but I would like to expand it a little bit more. The more clearer understanding of moha is the delusion of a self-centered existence. So does that make sense to you now? Huh? I'm very sorry, I'm English educated, so this banana cannot understand the Mandarin. Dosa is different, there is doa. Yeah. Okay, a lot of Bahasa Malaysia came from Sanskrit, a lot of words, old words. I don't know about the dosa, but like nama, rupa, rasa, all these are from Sanskrit. Okay, any other question? Yes, sister? How do you get to that space? Yeah, there's a space, yes. Yes. Okay. I like to catch what you just said. You say, stimulus is happening, reaction is instant, and this is the thing. Don't react. Be aware that something is stimulating your bodily changes and pause. By pausing, you are actually creating the space. Okay, Okay, the space does not really mean something physical. It could also mean a moment in time. Expand that moment in time. So when something happens, when you pause and you don't react, you are creating a gap in time before you react. And it is in this gap that you get a chance to choose your response. And by choosing wholesome response, positive thoughts over negative thoughts, then you are able to make your life more peaceful. So you create that space by pausing. Every time something upsets you, arouses you, don't react right away. And one of the most common arousal, we're driving happily, there's a little space in front of our car, suddenly somebody cuts in. And then our emotions are aroused. And then we react. One of the first things we do, we hammer on the horn. And then worse things happen, then we get very angry. And some of us even try to use our car to block him. And then what happens? By doing that, if that person turns out to be a road rage monster, he'll get out of his car and break your windscreen wiper, And that happens all the time. So create that pause. When somebody cuts in, you realize you're happening, then you suddenly, Satipatthana comes in. Kayanu pasana, your body is reacting. Oh, I'm getting excited now. Wait. Calm down. Pause. And then let him go. Okay? Yes. And a little bit of meditation practice. Learn and practice Satipatthana. You have to cultivate yourself. You have to go through the pain of learning and practicing. It doesn't happen through theory. This is not an academic exercise. Right? You don't think about it, write your thesis and get a PhD for it. You really have to practice it. Dhamma is DIY. Do it yourself. Dhamma is not academic. Dhamma is DIY. So you really have to practice Satipatthana meditation. But before you do that, practice the first one, Anapanasati. Come and join Venerable Susila on the 20th of August. Then you can learn Anapanasati. That is the pause. the relaxed part. Anapanasati is the relaxed part. The pause is the intention to want to do it. Now you want to practice Anapanasati. Then practicing Anapanasati is the relaxation part. Anapanasati actually is very powerful. In the sutra, the Buddha pointed out, it can help you overcome the 5 hindrances. You can eliminate the 5 hindrances by practicing Anapanasati. And that is stated in the sutra, in the Anapanasati Sutra. So, you have to do it, go through it, and then cultivate your mind. Get used to the idea that when something happens, don't react. Hold on. Always remember, when something happens, don't react, because your body gets excited. Any reaction is very emotional. So pause, and then only relax, and then only you think about it, using the 17 thinking traps to help you. What is affecting you? And then you can think more wisely. Those four positive thoughts, discerning the positive thoughts. Okay, I hope that answers your question, sister. Yeah, the tough part, that was the easy part. That talking was the easy part. The tough part now is to actually practice it. Yeah. Okay, yes, brother. Uh-huh. Where do you think it is? Yeah. The mind is in neither place. The mind does not exist. The brain exists in that sense. The brain is an organ. It is the activity of the brain that produces mental experience. And the 3 kinds of mental experience collectively is called the mind. So the mind is an activity. Activities don't exist. Activities are things that happen. Your brain is having this electrochemical activity going on. And it is this electrochemical activity that is going on that produces mental activity. That activity, collectively, there are 3 kinds. These 3 kinds collectively would be called the mind. So the mind doesn't exist. The mind is not an entity. It doesn't exist. The mind is an activity. It is an experience. All activities are to be experienced. So the mind is an experience. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's not easy to fathom that, but if you practice a bit more meditation, and when you get to Satipatthana meditation, I think you will begin to understand the mind better. Because Satipatthana meditation can really help you see for yourself what is going on in your mind by first looking at the body and then look at the mind, and then you see how your emotions arise, you see how you interpret circumstances, you will begin to understand what's going on in the mind, because the mind is just an experience. The mind is not an existence. It doesn't exist. Yeah.